to have them put that pressure on whatever group that may not be doing what we need them to do. And then we'll also be doing a lot of thorough testing, so setting up a lot of UAT. That's where lunches are incredible. Create a quick lunch meeting, provide them whatever food they want, and you can get them in there in a room and can really test. And like I said, most of those will be power users or super users for us that we'll be utilizing in that position. And so
this is, so we got to, or I don't know if it's an honor, but we got to upgrade. IT did right angles upgrade. So we have an ethanol division and they use right angle. And so we kind of got the IT team together to get some lessons learned that they learned that hopefully we can, as we upgrade to Horizon, learn from their hurdles or challenges. So that's kind of some lessons learned that we talked with the IT team about for their upgrade.
Yes. So one of the most important things that they talked about was obviously communication. They started with weekly touch points and established early on, what they needed to, be successful. They were transparent with everything of what they needed. How to really navigate the different business units for us, that would be, and for probably many of you, you obviously know your settlements group is unavailable for good chunks of time during the month, so there's narrow windows. You know that your trading teams are much more available in the evenings. So just trying to navigate what works best for them to get them involved. They did a lot of, testing and critical testing. And then one of the big things that we have come across recently was when we did an upgrade, we just did a like for like. And because we had been so far behind in our previous system, and then just kind of transfer things over, we did create and bring with us a lot of technical debt. So some code that we did not think about or prepare for starts to fail, and it's because we kind of just transferred everything over. We didn't really look at each piece, and so that was a mistake that we made. And obviously now we're working on going back, reviewing a lot of the code and really making priority lists of what needs to get addressed sooner so that we can get all this cleaned up and kind of proceed from there.
Yeah, we are trying not to do a total like for like and not bring over the stuff that we, already have problems with. So doing a lot of investigation beforehand to make sure that we're bringing over only what we need to bring over.
Yes.
Kind of what we learned.
And so like we talked about, we talked with Ion and just kind of wanted to know where everybody sits, because it's something you wonder about as you're going through an upgrade. Are you falling behind? Are a lot of people still in that same boat? And so as you can see here, right now, there are 13 upgrades currently going on to go to the Horizon version 22. And there are still quite a few people in Allegro 8. So we were the 9868 group. So there's still 29 of us over there. So, but yeah, so I mean, and if there's anyone here who is still in some of those groups, we're kind of just curious, maybe why you haven't upgraded yet, or are you in the process, or anybody who is in those Horizon versions, what can you help us with or provides everybody else that you think helped your upgrade be successful. So at this time, we'll kind of turn it over to you. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm going to have to read a project charter to you line for line. That's all I got. So hopefully everybody will want to conversate about this.
Our next slide says networking grade, but we're not going to do that yet. So ignore that one. We can kind of start off the Q&A. There's a little, do you want to go?
Yeah, I was going to say, so Tracy from Oxy, we are currently on 9868 looking to go to Horizon. One of the versions, I think we're leaning towards .5. I'm just getting everybody's feedback and seeing where they're at. Our hesitation really has been, we've had a lot of change in the company, right? We had the acquisition, all those other things, and we're finally in a stable place where we're really focusing on enhancements from the system side instead of fixes a lot and learning. So for us, it's the right time to start looking at it, as well as we were always nervous to take some upgrades just because of the instability that we've seen across the board. And with us having multiple commodities, gas, NGLs, and crude to the magnitude that we do, it's a very large undertaking, right? So we're looking almost to the same approach that you guys are, that we have a lot of customization. So what are customizations for things that we had to patch that, you know, Allegro patched in a later version that we didn't take, that could be fixed in Horizon, as well as separating that from what's our true customizations and enhancements, and evaluating all that, and how can we take that bucket and look at new requirements and new features and be able to unwind even more of that customization. But we think it's going to be a pretty large undertaking to get through it all, to evaluate it, to get everything on paper, know our risks, know where we stand, as well as clean up the database, right? We've been live for, I'm going to date myself, I think we went on in 2012, 13, something like that, which I have been a privy to all of them, so yay for me. But there's a lot of old code, you know, things that we don't use because the business has changed as well. So how can we clean up the database the most efficient way and get the most standard features from core code as possible? So it's gonna be a lot. We're nervous, as excited at the same time. So I'm curious to kind of see, you know, it's nice to see other people kind of in the same footprint that we are, so we can definitely bounce some ideas off and work together.
And that's a lot of what you said is actually what we're going through as well. Especially in our IT department, most of us have less than a year and a half working on these systems. We had a big turnover, and so thankfully we have a lot of help with all of that. But that was another thing. We have a very stable environment. Everything's running as we expect. When a problem pops up, we know how to solve that problem. And so it makes you nervous wanting to go to something else. So we are also working with our vendors to kind of, okay, how can we do the same thing? Let's clean up some of this. I think we have over 650 class events. Something tells me we don't need all of those, and a lot of them probably aren't used anymore. Some of them could even be duplicates to things where a small thing was changed over the years. I believe we implemented in 2014 originally is when we started our nat gas group. So it's kind of the same thing. We're nervous, we're excited, but there's a lot of stuff that we want to make sure we clean up and don't bring with us.
So what's your current timeline?
So we're hoping for, right now we're in the align phase. We're just kind of looking at, we're going to start our kind of our work sessions to get with each group. But overall, we're thinking with UT and all of that, or UAT, sorry, about 5 months.
Thank you.
Back to your comments about, you know, the customizations. That's a big part. We've been, we started in 145.3. We're testing version 22 right now. And, you know, we had a lot of custom code even developed by Iron and certified. By going to version 22, we made a lot of changes. So it's kind of retesting, and everything that was certified on 5.3 no longer holds water. So, I mean, you'll have to, it's kind of a process of, like you guys are describing, disable everything, take a look at it, what was fixed in the update, and try to read release notes, and oh, maybe this gets rid of. And the other complexity is how things get chained when you use class events, which you think, okay, I'm disabling this, but it had some other, so it's how you tie all those together and you're functional. But yeah, it's always, and we're just going from 5.3 to version 22. I can't imagine that nightmare from somebody going from Allegro 8 or even older and do all those. It's like I was talking to some other, I can't remember, was it Tony? We just better off re-implementing than going through all this process of, you know, going all these upgrades. It's easier just clean slate, let's rebuild our business process in the new platform. So, I mean, that's another decision point you can make.
Yeah, this is Jack from Missouri, and I wanted to kind of chime in on what he just said. We went from to Horizon 5.2 first, and the biggest challenge with that is your code libraries that you call upon for like all the class events will change. And now we're looking potentially to go from 5.2 maybe to 5.5, which seems like the most stable version from what I hear in the past couple of days. But even going from 5.2 to 5.5, all of your class events, the libraries and the function that they call on could have shifted and repackaged to other libraries. So then you have to update all your references, and then the dependencies in the code will all change, and not just that, the data structure and visual structure probably also changed, especially if you're in older versions not to Horizon yet. There's probably view customizations and things that traders or other departments are super used to. Like, for example, Tracy earlier, I think, was talking about the view manager. If that's something you had before, now you upgrade, you'll have to kind of rebuild that functionality. So we really wanted to, you guys mentioned, not go do a one-to-one comparison, because every implementation, the easiest route to take is do a like-to-like implementation. Let's see, tell me exactly what your code does before, we'll make it do exactly the same thing it does now. And sometimes that doesn't make sense, and most of the time that doesn't make sense. So the approach we try to take is, especially if we go from 5.2 to 5.5, reevaluate our business process. Because business also expand. You have new commodities, new business function units, and a lot of the class events before and things you do are band-aid fixes. This is an issue. Let's make a creative workaround. That person leaves the company. Nobody knows what the code does, but we know how the system functions now. So let's build something to make this behavior alter into this new behavior. And then 5 iterations later, you have the car in your picture. So for us, it was a lot easier to kind of rip off the carpet and just put in new floors and to just re-identify what is my core business need. At the end of the day, it's an order to cash process. You identify the piece, rip everything from that part of it, and then just rebuilding something from scratch is much easier than reading 15 dependent class events and tracing that chain along the line. Same thing on the view side. So.
Hi, this is Nick from Invenergy, and we're on 1.4.5. We went from 88. I don't remember what version it was, but I'd say, like, my experience in that upgrade was, one thing that we did is we compared the data model, just the table structures from the version we were on to the new version, and it was odd. The only field that we saw change was counterparty ID went to counterparty _ID, which was kind of funny. But we had a lot of turnover in that time too, and what we focused on was having our new version in sync with our prod and comparing our forward valuation and making sure that our settlement fin detail was in sync. So once we proved that everything was valuing the right way, we had a lot of confidence just to make the move forward. But like looking back on it, and like with a lot of people talking about views and stuff too, like the views don't transfer over. So you got to like go through that exercise and like reconfig your visual model, which we didn't do. And it hasn't been a huge problem, but there's always a new person that starts and, you know, they open up trade execution or whatever, and there's no panes there. And it's like, oh, you got to go open up your view and set your panes. And then when they go reset the view, like those panes aren't there anymore. So, you know, I kind of regret not, you know, spending more time in doing the views, because it is important. But also at the same time too, that doesn't change what's valuing. And a lot of stuff happens with us outside of the system too. So it was less kind of critical for that, but still it's best to take the time to do that and save a lot of pain. And that takes a lot of time too.
So coming
to add to that, yeah, you can check the data model, your database, but also they use a lot of in-memory data structures, the DS objects, and a lot of the business logic sometimes in the app. And they build like this, I call them pseudo views, which is a join in the back end of several tables where they come forward. In version 22, they changed some of those DS structures. So if you try to run a settlement where you had some hook, these were failing because not everything's being brought back the way it was. So we're struggling with that right now, you know, getting kind of the fixes to the logic now to apply that new DS that they added. So those other changes that are sometimes beyond that you don't see straight from the just database compare.
I forgot one other major change too. It's actually really nice in the app, but in the settlement view, the fin detail, we have, so it's a power producer. So we have all those hourly settlements, even sometimes sub-hourly. And then the new version just groups everything into 1 month number. And then there's like this separate pane kind of table that has that reference data. So like our settlements group, they need to provide the detail of those transactions. So we would just have them, you know, have a spreadsheet where fin detail pulled into the spreadsheet, and then they could send that out with the invoice. Our trick around that, which is probably isn't the best way to do it, is we have that sub-hourly detail on valuation detail. So the settlement sheet sends out valuation detail, although the invoice comes out fin detail. The number should be the same. It usually always is, if not always. But that was one kind of big change in configuration that you know, may cause some headaches. But I think in the long run, that change makes sense. It makes the settlement screen way faster. Our settlements users really like the new version a lot.
That we have the same issue where we have to send that data out, or Chile, they send the details underneath it. So, and we had this pro forma report in the old version, which we basically recreated by in the package that comes for deployment, in the help files that are there, it gives you the information about how to read the bin transact detail table, which is a compressed JSON format. You have to put some assemblies into your SQL Server, which will then decompress that data and allow you to do it. So we can now query that table directly as a regular table, and we just created a data view that the user is still able to pull that information and send with their invoice off of that table, that detail table.
So comment from online. Green Plains on 9131, looking at starting to do research this fall on going to Horizon. Next question is who is Eco using as a third party to help them do the upgrade?
So we are using Value Creed as our implementation partner and upgrade partner.
Yeah, I wanted to add a quick thing earlier as we were talking about data views. If you're lost and don't know of your current customization to rip off, the first thing I will look at are actually the data views, because I don't know how much exporting of data you guys do. Middle office is notorious for just giving the data out of the system. I'll put it in my spreadsheets. We'll run our first order greens. We'll run everything else in our spreadsheets, right? So a lot of pricing data and a lot of positional data, people have created data views historically to help that export process. But now if you have like custom processing interfaces that are no longer valid or used, a lot of those data views and class events can be cleaned up first of all.
I have a question for those who have kind of gone through some of the implementation or the upgrades to, 5. And you're saying that some of the table structures are different and the DS files and stuff are different. Did you find that out by basically on the job, oh man, this is different? Or did you see this written in a release note that guided you to look in these places where some of your customizations, your hooks might have changed? And I'm saying this so that Ion gets an idea.
I would say it's a mix. Some of the release notes very vaguely mention, oh yeah, financial, when you run settlement, there's a change in DS. But you don't know exactly what they changed. And it's something that you don't see, something in there, but then that kind of prompted us, well, it seems we need to test this. So you start testing it, and then you start seeing errors come out. And then this was kind of an iterative process and trying to understand what was going on based on our base functionality where we were running it versus new. So, and some of them may not be there, or you got to really read between the lines on all the release notes. But I think they kind of put them in there, but it's not very clear or instruction, or like I would say, we should have prepped for this, right? Knowing that they changed how settlement, then you need to test this, and this is exactly what we changed, and we're not sending position all over the hooks within settlement like it used to. Now we broke it up into 2 different, so now we're kind of piecing it together again to try to get our function hammered in again to make it work, because we have some customization on fees that we hook into settlement validation, and really that affects our business a lot if we don't get them working again. So we're trying to work through those.
I do feel like that's kind of a loaded question though, because, you also rely on your implementation team. Who are you hiring to do your upgrades? Who are you hiring to implement a product? They should know the product and kind of know what those changes are within them, and help walk you through that. For a lot of it anyways. Obviously, there's going to be quirks.
I can say that a lot of those class events I'm talking were developed by Ion. So, and this is what I talked about, the certification process. We certified them. We told them they're broken. They said, well, you're going to a new version. So the certification only holds for 5.3. So now we're kind of either work with them or hire help or do it ourselves, but we're going through that process. But it wasn't clear, like, if we went to version 22, by the way, these Ion class events that you guys certified, they're no longer going to work. So that's something we had to uncover.
Question, how many of you guys are using separate projects for writing your own custom code? Are you guys separately writing out in a separate project and then compiling the DLL and using it inside the code? Have you guys ever done it?
Show of hands, anyone? Did we understand the question?
So while you're writing your custom logic for this, and if you were to talk to, what is this, separate library, have you thought about creating a separate library when you want to pull data from inside SAP or any kind of, you have your custom classes, that's fine. So if you want to talk to SAP or some other clients, you don't directly go write the logic inside your custom classes, but write a separate project, create a DLL, and then use that DLL inside Allegro. I'm new to Allegro, so that's why I was asking. I'm a full stack developer with 20 years of experience, so that's new.
So at Energy Transfer, we do have, we don't build DLLs, but we do have separate Azure, we call it middleware, where we have code that sits outside and it communicates through web services to pull data out of the system. And then it does the logic that we want it to do to push to, we have Quorum as our kind of a system, we have SAP. So I think that's not uncommon at the bigger shops to have a dev team that does DevOps and a dev stack and says Allegro is this different thing for us. So we're going to create a layer that talks to it, pulls out what we want through web services. But that's not, when we talk about class events, that's kind of in the system and it's really different. And all of us, obviously it's a different technology and then typically most shops support, but we do support that model too. We would think of that as our middleware, and we're having to test that as well because that's getting upgraded to have to support .NET Core. So that's a project that says upgrade this middleware and see if it's compatible with V2022. So it adds another layer of complexity.
I was going to comment on that real quickly. As a former managing director at Ion for services, Ion has always not clearly stated in the contracts we're with customers, but they only will certify extensions on the version that you install them on. And if you upgrade, you have to get them recertified with Ion. You can ask your third-party provider or vendors if they will certify them as well and support them through the upgrades. If that's something you work into the contract. But that's Ion's policy, and it was very muddled, and a lot of people didn't know that. So if you're not clear on that, Ion will certify your extensions, but only for the version they install them on. If you want to upgrade, you have to recertify.
I just wanted to clarify your question. I think you were coming from a pure developer standpoint to say, why don't you rebuild DLLs in a way that, for the new version, right? Okay, so I think I understand your question. And the thing with Allegro is Allegro built their core product on this modularized technical platform. So everything, all the class events, which is all the custom code developed in Allegro, you can only develop based on what they call the triggers. And they provide you a library of triggers or classes or objects that you can interact with the core code. You can't write complete custom C# code to directly integrate into the base core product. So you're only able to leverage the existing library, and that's why it's
I mean, the class events are pretty much like
Microphone.
The class events are pretty much like hooks, from where you can call, like just you said, the middleware. You can directly call the services from there, is what I'm thinking. So
I want to go back to Russ on your comment about the certification. Yeah, you make a good point there, but during this project, right, we were in version 1 for 5.5, then the vendor decides to change the whole way they're going to now label their versioning and upgrades. Now they're going version 22 yearly, right? And during the project, we went through different versions of the 1.45. We started 5.1, then went to 5.3, which are major, but the class events were developed between two versions, if you think about it, and they're chained. So how do you deal with that, right? I mean, it's very muddy in the car. I mean, if you look at the service agreement, how that works. But I understand the point of, hey, we can't certify something like somebody in Allegro 8. You're in Allegro 8, I certify. You're going to make, I understand that. But right now, we're in such incrementals, right, that we felt like, you should have supported this part, but it didn't. But it is what it is, and we just work with it. And we're working with the vendor and then the partner, and we're getting it done. But yeah, sometimes it can get, like you mentioned, so.
No one wants Gail to start reading a project charter, so.
We do have a little fun way of getting people to talk, if we want to jump to that, or
No,
you think?
I have a question though
Okay.
from online, and maybe this is more of an Ion question, or even you vendors. You guys probably know the answer, and this is me being ignorant about it. Everybody's talking versions and 5.5 and 5.6 and version 22 and version 65 and 386 dot whatever. I mean, what is the latest and greatest one that is released? What are we calling that?
V22 is what they said.
So, and that's 5.5. So it has two names? 5.6.
Kind of.
But you,
5.5 was released in 2020.
okay,
Can you get him a microphone?
Yeah,
So that
who's
the
that?
people online can.
Come on.
I'm guilty right now. Oops.
Sorry, yes.
Hand you a microphone.
145.5.6 was rebranded as V22.
Okay, so then the online question is, why are you guys not going to 5.6? Because you said you're going to 5.5.
So that was kind of a decision that was made a little higher than my head. So to put nicely, that was something that my boss just kind of, he's not a fan of taking the most, like the newest release of anything. He'd prefer to kind of go one back, make sure all bugs and stuff have been worked out prior.
I think, sorry if it's Mike again, I'd like to have a conversation with you separately about that, just because I think, you're talking about going back to releases. And there's multiple reasons why you're better off taking the latest release, even if you think, well, the latest release is going to have the most bugs. It's actually the best release, frankly. Even if there are bugs that are new, because there's always our software, but there's going to be a lot of problems that you'll need to address in lower releases that may have been addressed in the latest release as well, V22. Plus, it's going to have the most runway in terms of having standard support, in terms of the number of years that you're going to be on our mainstream support. So something else to think about as well.
When was V22 released? What was it?
I'm sorry?
When was V22 released?
June last year.
Of
22. Yeah, 2022.
And I agree with that, because we took the latest and greatest at the time, which we went live with our Horizon August 1st last year. So we're on the 5.5 at Basin Electric. And we have since just completed doing another round of testing and implemented all the patches that have been done since then, which many of those patches included things we reported. So we took 3 patches in our latest one. So
It would be good just to understand the reasoning besides it's, not the bleeding edge release. If there's other reasons, good for us to know as well. And, we shared the chart of how many customers are actually already either live with V22 or in the process of. So it's not insignificant that you have 27 peers that are working with V22 already, something to consider.
One thing that I wanted to comment on, I'm sure with Opportune, is I agree with Mike, right? Obviously, sometimes if, I notice a lot of people on the technology side, they will say that's best practice. You don't take the latest and greatest because you want everyone else to deal with the bugs first, you know? But then it's kind of like weighing the options, right? The latest and greatest has prior bugs fixed in core code. One thing I would say, though, when you are starting implementation, I think you said yours is 5 months long. I think, because there are some other, you know, bigger, maybe 1 year or a year and a half, 2 year implementations, right? And so at the time when you decide which version you're going to take, right, it's the latest and greatest, and another one comes out. So we actually did make the mistake when we were doing an implementation that was spanned for 2 years. We were 3 months into it, and the latest version came out. We said we're going to take the latest and greatest because we're not going to go live until a year from now, right? In that latest and greatest were substantial changes to the accounting and settlement function, especially in your AP and AR screens, which really hosts all of the known extensions that we were already in the process of developing, already in the process of change management, was writing, you know. So there's both sides, like you really have to have, if you're using third-party vendor, like an implementer, who can kind of see that broader landscape and help you make those decisions too, right? So I think every customer's upgrade is unique, right? And so there's going to be different reasons why you go with the latest and greatest, or one behind, or sometimes even 2 behind, or something like that. But yeah, 2 behind is kind of risky.
Hi, Quincy with Osaka, we're on 134. So I was actually just curious, I've heard that before as well, that not to take the latest and greatest, but always to take one back, because a lot of people have fixed some of the bugs that the latest and greatest would have. I don't know if that's kind of a unofficial standard that people do, but I have heard that before, and I was just curious, the people, and I think you might have answered, someone may have answered it already, but someone who did take the latest and greatest, if an implementation takes half a year or a year even, or 2 years, by the time you are actually on that version, while you're doing implementation, are you working with Allegro to work through the bugs, or is it just more you're internally working through that at the company and not really reporting these things to Allegro, at which point, you know, you're hoping that things work out with class events and such?
Randy with Value Creed. Absolutely. Like if you go back to that first lessons learned slide, I think it was like 3 or 4.
From the
other one, sorry. There's a couple more right there. Yeah. So that second bullet is really important, right? So the reason the implementation takes the time it does, that it's not a simple technical upgrade and go with some simple regression, right, is testing all those business processes, right? And if it is a core code bug, then reporting and working through with support the reasons why that functionality is not working as expected, as designed, as documented in the release notes is incredibly important. That said, we all know that there are sometimes parallel tracks on these things, right? The timeline, the business criticality. One of the factors in this upgrade, right, for gas customers is there's a blackout window that starts around the new gas year, right, on October 1st, that says we don't want to be upgrading as we're going into winter, right, when gas historically is the busy season. And so 100% yes, work with support, track through the portal, core code bugs, and then the criticality and timing of those will, I think, drive, so that you can't say 100%, you'll always wait for that patch to be delivered. There may be cases that an internal fix and or a class event is required, and there may be cases that you're willing to wait through the process to get that patch delivered.
This is Stephen with Basin. To piggyback with Randy, communicate with Ion with it, like far in advance. And I will be honest, our support was really good. We communicated. We moved from like our normal like bi-weekly meeting with our guy. Like we do weekly and twice a week. Bugs were like immediately reported. Like we were out, we would get responses back same day. It's like they knew we were getting to be in implementation, So they geared up on their end as well. So just make sure you communicate with ION and your account rep and your support people. Because like I said, they were there right away with us. I mean, like they knew we were gearing up for it like a year and a half in advance. So they were ready. It was pretty, I don't want to say seamless, but they were very helpful right away and responsive.
Yeah, and I'll echo that for sure. I mean, having ION understand your plans and your process, milestones and timelines, because we're trying to organize patch releases in a way that gives you advance notice on when you can expect those patches. And when we get, I don't say out of the blue requests for immediate response on an issue that doesn't seem to be critical, but it's important for your implementation because your UAT starting next week and we had no idea, right? And that kind of stuff we can avoid just by communicating in advance timelines, right?
Yeah, this is Jack from Missouri. I think all the implementations I've ever seen, ever been part of, even if you have an implementation vendor from a consulting company, you're still working with ION. And if you're not there working with ION, I don't think I've ever seen a case where ION has not been involved in a large-scale implementation, especially across a major release. And that's to echo what Mike was saying earlier. If you get to the latest release, then as you're working through it, they can put the ones that affect more than one client into the core code and update that release with the latest bug patch to kind of accommodate to everyone on that. And by the time, I think someone else mentioned, by the time you go live, there might be a new version. So to Quincy's point, you are now on the most stable version, the one less.
I think so. Tyler Tamplin, ION Group account manager. So I know that working with ION, there's many different facets that you come into our organization. And so whether you're coming in through your support rep or through professional services or through someone in development that may be helping you through a specific issue, you also have your account manager. So a lot of times, like Jack was sharing, is like talking about your upgrade, or even Stephen was sharing for Basin on their upgrade. One of the good things that ION has helped us, I would say from an Allegro perspective, is some of the good behaviors and really getting into some good habits on sharing our planned timeline for our releases. So as you're going through your project planning, even before you have kind of set when does UAT fall, one of the recommendations, having been a implementation manager for Allegro, is look at those in advance. So we're publishing those out onto our support sites. So as you're going through project planning, whether it's internal to your organization or with a third party or with an SI, get that from the site so that you can see when the releases are planned. We've all done upgrades or implementations, and I don't know a single customer of mine that's gone through UAT and not had to either take a patch or a class event. So if you can plan a UAT round one, and then your round two happens maybe 2 weeks after a patch comes out, if you can plan for that in advance, I understand you can't always do that, but that would be helpful. But like Mike said, if you can communicate with your account manager, let us know when you're planning doing things. Again, kind of going back to good habits, ION now has a site where our support and our account managers are all communicating when customers are upgrading, when the key milestone dates are, and as those shift, if you're communicating that with us, it helps us forecast and plan for that support. So if an issue is causing you major heartache issues, communicate that up through support, through your account manager. It just helps everybody kind of have those open lines of communication.
I do really want to stress what Tyler's saying is important. I think, I was from Allegro, now I'm the third-party vendor side, but the timelines and in the specific scenario that I was talking about too, right? That planning is so important. From an ION involvement, when you're one of the first adopters of the latest release, they are all hands on deck. So you get a lot of attention, a lot of help there with e-patches and stuff. But in this specific scenario, and I think because I mean, if it's Quincy asked the question to you, what we put at risk was the customer confidence. So we had to keep adjusting the timeline, right? And then that is really, I think, the users got burnt out. The timelines kept getting pushed, and all they do is lose confidence in the product, really, right? So there's a lot of things like from even, and now that I'm speaking from a third party vendor side too, there are a lot of intangibles to consider, not just like what's the latest, greatest code, what's the bugs, what's the functionality and things. It's about the success of the project and how much you want the users to buy in.
And to that point, you also talking about the landscape around it. One of the reasons we're pushing from our end was Microsoft also on .NET technologies. They're not going to be supporting .NET, with Allegro 8 going forward. So they moved into the .NET Core model, and now they released .NET 6. So from a corporate standpoint, we're looking, we don't want to sit on any of our products sitting on older .NET technology, right? So we want to be in the forefront, and that's one of the reasons we push through. And are working with Allegro, and whatever bugs we have to work, test this .NET Core, this new, because for them it's also a big change, right? You're going now to .NET 6. The way the application is deployed, everything changes. So, and you got to look around the landscape of what Microsoft is doing, which is you guys partner up with them, so that's very important too.
Yeah, just to echo again, that's the added piece. The 5.6 is going to .NET.6, and so it's not the instability of everybody having to move their Microsoft stack to .NET 6. And now you got to have and we just got a question about that. Your IT team, it's not just an ETRM project, you got this other project on top of it. And so like I was saying with that middleware piece that's talking to ETRM, they're on an upgrade to support .NET 6. So you got a lot of pieces moving on the technology landscape now. It's really important to have a good relationship with ION, a great technical team, and we can use this forum to share our experiences about all these things that are moving that we're dealing with.
Yeah, to add on to that, taking a patch is very intimidating, but to say that is taking a release is very intimidating. But when it comes to bug patches within the same release, it's less intimidating because as far as Missouri goes, in-house we have the ability to take bug patches internally without any external help because they're usually pretty smooth. And any bugs, we're able to work with our account rep pretty smoothly. But whenever you have like a .NET Core change, that is definitely not something we can take in-house. So if you're on a latest, release version, then if you have to take more patches and they're bug patches, they're not terrible.
Okay. So to piggyback on that, what kind of testing do you guys do? I'm curious, between doing patches or doing a full upgrade release. Like, how extensive are your testings?
Taylor, AES. So our business is, I think we touch almost every part of the Allegro system. And we have a pretty sophisticated setup. We have a team of 9 of us currently that support Allegro and its ecosystem. So we worked with ION last year, but we revamped our regression testing process. It's really extensive. So now we have approximately 800 test cases that cover every piece of the functionality that we use, deal to cache, as well as previous defects and things like that. And so our team, so we just implemented last month a maintenance patch that we worked on for about 9 months. The main testing that we did, a lot of that was revamping our test cases, but typically a testing cycle for us is like at least 3 months with our team taking on the bulk of that testing. We try to avoid including users until we absolutely have to, just from the burden on their time.
Does anyone use ATA?
I was just going to ask the exact same thing.
We are evaluating it now. We have a project in place. Our business sponsor directed us, and I've told some of you this, he told us not using it is not an option because our users don't have the time to test this stuff. We can't go through these cycles. We have an extensive test library, deal to cache, and they said our users can't spend all that time. So he's personally invested in working with ION, and ION is working with us to build out ATA and improve it so that we can do a deal to cache regression testing. It's not going to be 100%, but he said if I can get the 80-20, the simple trades, the simple transactions, the system to automatically book the deals, schedule them, settle them, and value them, that's great business value for Energy Transfer. So we are using it. That's our intention is going forward. That tool will be in our toolkit to help us do automated regression testing. And we're happy to talk about that and share our experiences going forward. But that is definitely a project that we're doing in parallel with this upgrade.
How long is it taking you just on the ATA piece? And I'm only asking because Basin has it in their budget to bring in ATA because we feel the same way. We need to bring in something automated to do all that regression testing.
Yeah, we started back in January this year. We were 3 months, but since we have so many moving parts, putting a measure of it, like how long is it taking? I mean, part of it is our fault too, because sometimes we're moving servers, we have issues, we stop a little bit the process. But so far, we've been doing that, like Michael explained, the deal to cash. We already set up all the trade automation and tested all that. We're working through the kinks on the scheduling, and we already have the bots set up, and we just dealing with little aspects that they're fixing to get it all streamlined. Next step will be the allocation step and then the settlement. But to me, that part's going to be, we've already started testing it. So it's been like a 3 months process, but staggered around. But our goal is to have it, we have budgeted like for 6 months, from January to June to develop. But it's kind of an ongoing effort between ION and us.
So you're partnering with ION to create kind of base cases or base scenarios that will already be built then into there, or to be able to use
We're
those?
creating bots, and the bots will be like you give it a file of trades, it'll bring them in. I mean, I don't know what ION plans to do with those. If there's something, I mean, my idea would be if they develop these bots, and you start developing bots, create like a bot library or something that could be shared among users or deployed with the ATA. But the hard part of the ATA is all the configuration that goes into it. Yeah. It's like you cannot if we give that tool to our business sponsor, I mean, like out of the box, hey, go build your bot. That's why he partnered. He's trying to learn, but sometimes he goes, well, this is over my head. But build me the bot, and I know what to do with it. That's the silver lining there to get it. And that's where we're working.
Sorry, and that's our concern, Jack from Missouri. So I wanted to ask, is the effort, quote unquote, worth it? Because the ATA, you have to spend a lot of time really configuring it to a very detailed level to have good test cases to run through your base scenarios. And when we say base scenarios, I imagine it doesn't include your more complex scenarios. Say if you had an interface with a ERP system and you have very special netting rules, cross-commodity netting rules that, like the reverse and rebook doesn't fall into the right GL account, or if you act as an agent on behalf of another company, right? There's some very highly complex scenarios that every business has. Does ATA 1 handle that? 2, is the configuration worth that effort?
Again, we already told you that we're a merchant. For us, it's very important to get trade scheduled and invoiced. So that's our business. So for us, wow, it's a great benefit.
Your first-end users would say yes.
Yeah. And you remove users from this testing. So every time you say, oh, no, it passed. Oh, I got to run all these tests again. And you have the scheduling director, I got to do my. This would be such a benefit for us. But I agree, there's some corner cases, but those corner cases we can do like the regular, that reduces our test cases to just run 1,000, maybe 100 that we have to run manually. So it's a big benefit.
But does that take away from the accountability on the business groups if you don't have them to sign off? If you, as the IT function, say, I've ran all these cases for you, we're passing it, and then things crash, right?
The tool will, as you run it, will give you all the kind of the testing of the tests, and it will tell you where it failed and everything. And you can create a document out of that and say, hey, we ran these tests, here are the business scenarios, we agreed on this. The bots we have the set of trades that we're going to test. All that you can and as you run them and they pass, I mean, that's your document of sign off from the business and there. So.
Okay, one more question, because we're going to take a break. So one more, or statement.
Just a comment from, who's a master of the ITA,
So, to add on to what Andres and Mike said, ATA has come a long way since the last time I presented in the user group even, because of COVID, and I did not get a chance to present think last December we presented online some of the advanced features in ATA. We have, we have these bot labs, and what we've created for energy transfer for the trade execution, we've created it pretty quickly and handed it back to them. The pathing scheduling was new to us, so it took a little longer than what we expected, but it's completed now. So to that point as to we can actually package that and offer for the next customers that will be faster. The way we're implementing ATA these days is for the user to go in and change the dates in a spreadsheet, in a criteria, the DB criteria in a spreadsheet, and ATA would do the pull, export the trades from one database, like maybe production replica database, and then we can actually replay them in the test environment. So that seems to be a good strategy that's working similar to a parallel test, but it won't take each day manual users. It's automated, so similar to a parallel test, automated. And then the second thing is for the upgrade. One of the test frequently and extensively point is to plan ahead, and before you do the upgrade, plan ahead and build it on ATA. What we plan to do is bring in the latest DLLs to whatever version you have, as long as you're above as long as you're on 145 or 1344.5 and above. And that way, those same test cases can be used against the upgraded version as well. So that's one of the plans that's what we're doing right now, and happy
Great.
to talk more. Please
Sounds
reach out.
fantastic. Okay, we are going to take a quick break, 15 minutes.